All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome back here to a Monday. It is 11:11 a.m. California time, November 3rd, 2025. Pretty busy day of earthquake activity. Also, a bunch of happenings there on the sun with a massive CME eruption. Also, we got this coronal hole that's facing us now. This is the more more recent image of the Earth-directed coronal hole. Last several times here, when that's been facing the planet, we've seen elevated earthquake activity, and today it is continuing with the elevated movement. Of course, watching this area up here around the Kamchatka area, got a decent swarm of movement stirring up here out of the blue. We had a couple fives last night. That 5.8 originally coming in as a 6.2, I believe, 6.3. They downgraded that one a little bit. Seen a couple more fours. There was another verified 6.1 shortly thereafter, and a number of fours and fives throughout the morning. Now, that's a little on the scary side because this was starting to die down. This is where the 8.8 earthquake struck back in the end of July. That's a decent size event, right? But from what I gather, it's only partially relieved the strain out here across the Kamchatka trench region. So there's some possibility that we could see a similar magnitude or greater. I'm just basing that on the information that I've gathered and the technical analysis of the whole slip accumulation here over time. Since we had seen a large 9-pointer out here in this area, it's been a while. There's definitely a difference between an 8.8 and a 9.0. A big difference between 6.0 and 9.0, and we've had a bunch of sixes out here. This is just here in the last 24 hours. I did pull up the 6.0 and above map here for the Kamchatka area just to show you guys how many earthquakes have struck above 6.0 since July. There's the 8.8 that struck back at the end of July. Previous to that, we actually had a 7.4. 7.4 right here, 10 days previous to the 8.8. So that 7.4 was after actually some foreshock activity. Seen a number of sixes in there as well that were all foreshocks. There's one 720, 719, 720. So yeah, a lot of sixes here. But remember, the equivalent of a 6-pointer is compared to a 9-pointer it's got some big time numbers here. Let's check this out real quick. For a 6.0 earthquake to equal the energy released by a single 9.0, we would have to have, it looks like according to the math here, 32,000 magnitude 6.0s to equal the energy released by a single magnitude 9.0. So this is not completely released in far as strain buildup here. With this elevated swarm stirring up, that's the time that we have to watch here for possibly some larger movement. That's a large uptick in earthquake activity. The last one coming in about 9 o'clock or so my time for a 4.9, but that's I'm pretty surprised to see that this morning. That 6-pointer, well, supposed 6-pointer that came in late last night had already happened when I went to bed. But all this activity stirring up now that we got a coronal hole facing us. So it's very likely we'll see some larger movement throughout the next couple days here. And I'm thinking the Kamchatka area is not done yet with large-scale potential earthquake activity. Watch for, we could easily see another 7, or we may just see a complete 9 out here. That may fully release that strain that's been building out here for quite some time. The 8.8 did a little bit, but a full complete release of strain, I would think we'd have to have a 9-pointer out there. Anyway, that's the worst case scenario. Hopefully that goes out or goes away, but we'll keep an eye on that region regardless. Definitely seeing some decent uptick in earthquake activity. Movement down south here around the Philippines, a little clustered, but this is always like that on any given day. I don't see anything big happening today, just some 3s and 4s, but of course it's an area to watch because it's been very active here in the last couple weeks or so. The Philippines area stirred up the last time we had a massive coronal hole facing us. They had that 7-pointer, I believe it was. Let's see here. What was that? It was in this cluster right here, this bigger earthquake, 7.4, back on the 9th of October. So we'll keep an eye on things here today. Definitely pretty active out here. Further deep movement across the Tonga Trench. Not a whole lot going on there across New Zealand for now. There's a 4.7 from last night. That's at the southern end of the Kermadec Trench. West Coast, let's see what we got going on here for California real quick. I do see some larger movement down south. It's 5.5 in Chile. Let's see what we got up here real quick. One right on the San Andreas Fault here, right on the southern end. It's a little 1.4. Some activity up along the Garlock Fault shear zone as well. Far as 2.5 and above goes, just goes to a 2.8 from yesterday up around the Clear Lake Volcanic Field. That's hydrothermal plants up there creating energy. But aside from that, let's see. Yeah, there's a little bit of swarming going on. Well, a couple quakes here literally right at the extreme southern end of the San Andreas Fault. And then two further down south here. I don't recall the last time I seen something right there in that level. Looks like maybe we had one here away from the region in the last 30 days, but that's definitely a little concerning when you start to see it right there on that branch. There's a section right here of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault that did not rupture back when the longer length of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault ruptured. So we got some potential here over 300 years, and I have a feeling this next time when it ruptures out here, we're going to see this part go with the rest of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. I mean, I wouldn't see it skipping this area again. It's so locked and loaded that it's going to go in a big 8.1 earthquake. That's the numbers that are out there. Not fear-mongering. That's just the cold, hard truth there. So we'll watch that. Some interesting activity. We've got all this movement happening around the planet, right? And the Pacific Plate. Eventually, California is going to have to adjust out here, and we're going to have to adjust to the damage that's going to take place. Just going to make sure we're prepared. Northern California, a couple smaller quakes there from this morning. Southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone here, but really not seeing anything of any noteworthy value. A couple earthquakes there. Mount Hood. Mount Rainier getting some earthquake activity as well. They actually had a 1.4 showing up there on the map at the summit. I think that swarm is kicking up here, and I've been calling it here since when they said the swarm ended. We're always looking at these graphs here. Let me go over to the PNSN network, and we'll check out the Mount Rainier seismograph station here real quick. See what we got going on. But I've been saying that these little events here are still earthquakes nonetheless. There's a 1 point what they call it 1.4 at 2347. Just not super deep, little shallow there. 2337. So that's definitely going to be that 1 pointer coming in. But there's been a number of smaller quakes in there as well. We've seen events like this in the past month or so, where they go unreported. But this one got reported today, surprisingly. Quite a few other smaller quakes out there. Definitely seeing some smaller ones stir up. Turn that on silent. Previous day here, as you can see, still some earthquake activity popping up here at Mount Rainier. It's a volcano in Washington. Now, I did see some activity there at Mount Hood as well. I want to see what we got going on up here, if we can get this seismograph station to work. There's a couple, yeah, definitely showing up quite nicely here. There's this goes back to yesterday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth one being the largest at about 1:20 in the morning or so. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Yeah, they're not reporting that previous earthquake. See at 5:12 in the morning for a point 0.3. Let's go see here real quick. Oops. 5:12 in the morning for a point 0.3. 5:12 in the morning. It's not this. This would be 12. Well, maybe it would be. This would be around the 12 mark, I guess. I don't see anything else up here on the red line for the fives, so this has to be it right here. Well, I got my glasses on and everything. That's really not hard to see, but what about all these other bigger ones that are showing up? How can they just ignore those and point out a little blip like that? That's definitely a legit earthquake. It happened about 1 something in the morning, and it's not listed up here. This is the last 24 hours. Okay, that's just a little weird. Mount St. Helens as well has been seeing some earthquake activity. I'd definitely call it a little swarm that's going on up there. Make sure all the bells are off, which they are. Let's see. Let's go back up here because nothing's being reported there on Mount St. Helens right now. A little light, but you can see there in the shadow of the seismic digital readings, these little blips here. Those are very small earthquakes. I don't see anything of any uptick going on there across the area of Mount St. Helens. I do want to check Mount Hood, though, when it comes to the inflation, see if there's anything going on up there across that area. Nothing up at the summit. It's all around the volcano as far as these GPS stations go. I don't see any uptick going on. No uplift. This is the vertical displacement. It's kind of staying low a little bit. That's at the southern end. Northern end here. Yeah, this is current. Got these seasonal changes here that fluctuate with the ground absorption of the snow melt and whatnot. Same for the west side. I don't see any decent uptick going on there. It would obviously show, but we are seeing some earthquake activity. So we'll continue to watch that. Definitely keep an eye on that. Yellowstone National Park, a number of earthquakes here this morning. No telling how many happened over the weekend. The data out here has been a little skimpy and a little out of whack, so to speak. Let's see. It looks like they did add. They added a couple there from the 2nd. So this swarm's still going on there. Even some from the 1st. That brings up a total tally here. There's a couple different swarms out here. Total tally of 71 earthquakes there at Yellowstone National Park supervolcano. The majority up here around the Mammoth area, where the 3.7 struck here. Last week I was on the 28th and had a decent swarm since then. The concerning factor here is that how many earthquakes are not being reported here by the official site. Normally, let's go see if they're up and running. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Been having some issues here. They claim that the websites are offline or data is going to be wrong because they're not getting the government shut down and whatnot. But these are digital stations. This isn't where you have to change the seismogram paper, the drum roll or whatever, every 24 hours or every couple days, however they do it. This should just be automatic by the computers. Data is still offline since the 24th, so I have no way of knowing if this swarm has been continuing in intensity. We just have to take what they're showing us there on the USGS map and go with that. Let me see here if this is picking up anything. You can kind of compare what they're putting out. Let's go back here. Didn't mean to close this window out. You can kind of compare what they put out this morning. So there's a 0.9 at 3:24 in the morning. So 3:24 in the morning. That's Got to open up another seismograph or another data here. Another window. It's a Monday. I can feel it definitely. So that that earthquake should show up here in Maple Creek, the one I just had open. 3:24 in the morning. 3:24 in the morning is going to be. There'd be maybe that one. Can you guys see that? Barely. What about all these other ones that happened this morning? See, so there's, I believe this swarm is definitely continuing. To an extent, I don't know, because we're just limited here on data that we can actually utilize here. The seismograph stations here are so squashed as far as the amplitudes and the sensitivity goes when it's picking up earthquake activity. It's almost useless. You can barely see some of these events, and the ones that they are reporting look something like that. So, you got to think here that those have to be way bigger throughout the morning, and their last reported earthquake was at 3 in the morning. So what about these other ones that are stirring up right now? This should look something like this time last year. We had decent readings out here where we could see what was going on. We had a little swarm up there at Mary Lake. This is what the seismograph stations should look like. Full readings when the earthquakes come in. They're not squashed and limited to a certain amplitude. And then from there, you can kind of see how that activity showed up across the majority of the park. That's legit earthquake. You can pick out what is legit earthquake activity and what may be wind just by looking at the seismograph stations here, how that earthquake activity showed up on quite a few other seismograph stations out here. But rest in peace to this. Hopefully, it would be nice if they could change it back, but I don't think they will. So I've got my fingers crossed that the USGS will get their data up and running, because it's it's a little bit frustrating here to know that there's a swarm going on, but the only way to really monitor it is through a live seismograph station here. That's around Madison. So I guess anything that does come in should show up here, but the recorded ones, something's wrong with them. The amplitude's off. Looks like another earthquake. I bet you that's another big one around Russia right now. Let's see, is it coming in yet? Or maybe it's Japan now. Oh, it's actually down south here. I thought it was a distant large event up north here, but now we're getting some movement down south. Major adjustment overnight and this morning up north. Now we're getting that pressurization south here. Could be a busy week here of large earthquake activity. Watch the Nankai Trough. There's a couple earthquakes there in the section A, it looks like. 4.2 and a 3.0. Right there across that subduction zone. I'm going to double check the Japan Meteorological Agency. I know we're all over the place this morning, but there's so much going on. A lot of crazy activity happening right now. There's that 5.2 stirring up there on the east coast of Japan right now. Not a big earthquake, but it just goes to show how the pressurization there can move around the plate following large events like we've seen here at the Kamchatka, Russia area overnight and this morning. Looks like there's a swarm going on here around the Kagoshima prefecture area. That's at the, that is at, I believe that's section A out here. There's 5 different segments of the Nankai Trough. A, B, C, D, and E over here, I believe, are they're major areas that sees a large earthquake activity. They can rupture in pairs, sections, or they can rupture in its entirety, as far as all sections going on at once. And the last time it had some earthquake activity, it failed to take section E with it. So it was A, B, C, and D. More than likely, this next time that comes out, it will, as far as a big earthquake goes, it will take the entirety with it, all sections at once. But we do have a, looks like a swarm going on there. This is a region, the Kagoshima area. Notice the epicenter region here. Look at all those earthquakes occurring about 2 o'clock this morning. Bunch of ones, bunch of twos, even a 4.2. Yeah, this, and then it halted there. It looks like it stirred up roughly about 1:54 in the morning, and then it just got a decent swarm of activity there. So watch that closely. Again, that's section A over here. USGS not going to report it, but what is happening is right here, right around that level. That's, oh man, that's a thing could produce some big earthquakes. This is the area, in fact, that the Japanese Meteorological Agency there put out a megaquake warning for last year, thinking that there was, increasing odds of seeing a megaquake because of the amount of time that has passed. Section E did not rupture the last time, and all the swarms that were going on around it. Nothing big happened last year. And then again, we had swarms like crazy down south. We're getting some further activity into the Nankai Trough itself. That, yeah, definitely definitely an area to watch here closely with all the movement happening right now across the Pacific Plate. This is technically one area that has not really squeezed in as far as the filling in of pressure, so to speak. I mean, I'm looking at the maps here over the last, let's go back here, last 7 days or so. I think we'd have to go back the last 30 days to see all the activity. Philippines, remember all the 7-pointer, a bunch of 6s working its way north. Some activity around the Manila Trench. All the activity from last night and this morning around the Kamchatka area. Previous activity down south here. All this is pointing an arrow towards probably this region right here, the Nankai Trough included, for some larger earthquake activity. It's just, there's nothing on it right now. We did have this super deep earthquake into that subduction zone on the 20th of October, 223 miles deep into that subduction zone. So we know the stress and strain's building. It's got a swarm on it this morning. Got activity stirring up around Japan right now, Kamchatka area. It definitely makes sense there that we could see some larger adjustment take place here very soon across this area. Yeah, so there's that 5.7 Japan area that showed up pretty nicely. At first, I thought it was a distant earthquake because it kind of looks like a distant earthquake there. Let me see, did it show up on the Kamchatka, Russia area? Where's my Kamchatka station at? What? Do I not have one? That's kind of odd. I normally keep it up there. Unless I accidentally closed it here recently, but a little weird. Okay, I'll have to go back and add it because that's had all this earthquake activity happening and the station's not even up and running. Pretty crazy. All right. Newer activity down here across the Tonga area as well, outside Fiji. That is pretty deep earthquake. In fact, we've had 3 deep earthquakes out here in the last 24 hours. This just being the latest for a 4.6. A lot of adjustment taking place out here. I mean, it's seems like whatever was happening last time here with the coronal hole facing us, it's happening again. So watch for some larger earthquake activity out here. There's that 6.3 in Afghanistan from that's from yesterday. When's it gonna drop off? Pretty soon, about an hour or so. So we're all right with the time. Turkey still swarming like crazy out there. Bunch of movement elevated today. There's a 5-pointer, bunch of 3s. I'm sure many other smaller quakes in there as well. The Atlantic Ocean has gone super quiet. The Chile area has seen some larger movement down there this morning as well. That looks like a 5.5 along the Peru-Chile Trench with a swarm of other earthquake activity in that region. Middle America Trench, we had that super deep earthquake from yesterday. Notice that ring here being raised off the globe. Some uptick going on there at the shallow adjustment level, but man, this is just looking crazy out here. I think it's going to be a busy day for me, so I'm going to stick around the earthquake office here and watch things. And I will add the, I can do that right now, actually, see if we got the Kamchatka seismograph station up and running. Normally I'll add it up there because it's a major region for earthquake activity. But then again, it may be offline. I don't see it loading here, so. But I'll check back on that. I may have to adjust that. Do you have the Philippines up here? Oh, it looks like I'm slacking a little bit. Normally these are just the typical stations that I watch. Japan's up there for now, so that's a good one. That's kind of a middle ground between the Philippines and the Kamchatka area, so we can at least see if big earthquakes strike on that. But I'll do some adjustment here in a little bit. All right, let's get to space weather activity. Of course, we have that coronal hole facing us. This image is behind. It's number 94. This is well, it's definitely over a day old now. This is over months old. This is a couple months old. Back from middle of September. So the most recent image to see how close the coronal hole is going to be this one, showing a direct facing, Earth-facing coronal hole. It may not look like much here on the UV image because this is more focused on seeing bright areas where solar flare activity is occurring, such as over here. So we do have this directly facing us right now. We've seen elevated earthquake activity already now that this is facing us, and also a bunch of flaring activity this morning there around a very active region. I bumped up my solar flare threats last night because I seen how this thing was looking, fairly massive in coverage area and also complexity, magnetically speaking. This is not the most recent one here, so we're going to go over to the Stanford site and see the very latest imagery here, which should show here at the bottom. The other one I think was behind a few hours. These ones are much closer into view. Also a new sunspot down here that just kind of popped up over the last couple days. See, this is current. The other one was well, that's at zero. That's straight up at the 0-100 time frame. Excuse me. This is current here at 1900, right? 1900. Yes. So the other one's almost behind by a day as well. Crazy. So we do have this massive area over here that's been popping off large M flares and a long duration M flare recently, along with a massive full halo CME, not Earth directed. I know I've seen a couple sites out here already saying that we have a massive CME headed to the Earth. It was directly Earth related. Unless we're way out here off the eastern limb, you know, this is our view from the Earth right here. That's not gonna, if anything, it'd just be barely a glancing blow, or more or less like a shock wave effect from that massive CME that is way too far pointing to the east to be a direct impact. But it did produce a dandy of a CME. Let me show you guys real quick. Kevin has that here on his site. By the way, this is solarham.com. Kevin does a good job of keeping the site updated and stuff like that. So watch over here. You guys see that? Massive CME away from us, not directed at us. So just kind of ignore those posts that are going on there on social media sites. You know, they may be getting the data mixed up. Yes, there is a coronal hole facing us, but we won't get the high-speed solar wind stream from it until about 48 to 72 hours. It's a little bit slower compared to the massive CMEs when they blast off there at high speed. But we will watch for adjustments there on the Aurora forecast once the Space Weather Prediction Center gets a hold of it and, you know, figures out the specific details. But there's the large M flare activity that struck this morning. Quite a few M flares. Long duration M flare, another one. There's the most recent one there a short time ago. We do have the possibility, just looking at the imagery here, of maybe seeing an X flare. We do have to watch this area. Another region of concern is back over here. So we do have at least two large, very large areas of sunspots that are capable of producing up to an X flare that will be turning more into an Earth-directed view. And of course, once it's out here a little bit more, then it can be geo-effective when it comes to those massive CMEs that may hit us. But that was just, it was pointing way too way off to the east. Another area is this little beauty of a sunspot. Still looks like it's growing here overnight. Have to keep an eye on that one because that is just about directly facing Earth. Let's see if it's been named yet. See if it's got a name. 4273 down here. That's one of our newer sunspots. It just kind of popped up out of the blue. And again, this is behind a day. Notice how you can barely see the imagery of this region. This is the latest imagery. So, two very large sunspot areas in the on the sun, their eastern limb, that we'll get a much better view at here in the coming days. All right, so flare threats bumped up here, about 55 to 60% chance there for M flare. X flare about 10 to 15% chance, I would say. Things are starting to sizzle on the sun, so to speak, with the M flare activity kicking up. No major auroras there in the forecast for now, but that it will be subject to change here over the next couple days once the data gets reviewed. Close approach asteroids here to the planet. We'll take a look here real quick. Millions of miles away. I don't even bother with them if they're millions of miles away. Not even worth looking at. So we'll move on here to the Storm Prediction Center, where there is not a whole lot of severe weather either. Nothing. Really nothing in the forecast. All across the west coast, waiting on the arrival of a nice storm system here, I would say. I'm going to get a decent amount of precipitation, I think. Atmospheric river aimed at Northern California. The Eureka area is supposed to get, inches of rain. Crescent City as well. Of course, they don't have a mountain, that's blocking the rain, creating a rain shadow. Here in the Sacramento Valley, we're dependent on the flow that comes from kind of the southwest up the valley. This one right here has that little effect to it, so we should be good as far as rainfall goes in the Sacramento Valley as well. Snow up in the higher elevations. I believe it's up around 8,000 feet or so. But this is going to be a definite soaker. There's more behind that as well. Southern California. Ooh, there's another one. This one's looking a little bit juicier. Down the road there towards the end of next week. That could change, but right now it's trending wetter and wetter for Southern California as well. So you guys get your turn, and then maybe another one behind that. And I would love to see this go on all winter. This is not when the skies are supposed to be clear and starry and dry. We're supposed to be getting our rain this time of year. This is our rainy season. So the more storms that come in, the better chance of us not slipping back into a drought. And it does look like Southern California will be picking up on some of that beneficial rainfall as well. They need it. All right, so, coronal holes facing us, folks. Last time this happened, we've seen a decent amount of earthquake activity, not just in one spot either. It kind of kicked up all over the globe. It's directly facing us. Be on guard there for some larger activity. It's just one of those things here. I'm not completely convinced that is happening, but it does seem to cause uptick in terms of earthquake movement when it is directly facing the planet, as far as that coronal hole activity goes. Writing it down in my book here of how space weather activity, when it kicks up like this, how the earthquake activity behaves here on the planet. Just kind of keeping a total tally in my head. I'm going to make a chart here in a year or two, and we'll look at the data. I may do it. Well, it's too early to do it. You can't just do it in a 6-month period. Some of these people out here on YouTube and whatnot have been, definitely solid in their belief that the coronal hole activity and space weather in general can elevate earthquake activity. I've seen it happen during proton events. Not so much when a strong solar flare occurs, but it's interesting how we've seen that uptick this morning in the Kamchatka area while we were seeing the large M flare activity. But at the same time, we do have this massive coronal hole that's facing us. So which one is it? Was it a combination of both? Who knows? But it's just one of those things here where we have to accumulate enough data to make a decent outlook as far as a decision on if that does affect the Earth or not. I think it does, just by seeing what I've seen out here. Alrighty. So yeah, seismograph stations right now quiet, but just be on guard out here. I'm telling you, folks, could see some larger activity out here today. Have yourself a good Monday. Stay safe. We'll see you guys out here soon.